So, yeah, welcome to the last day. For those who have survived the 5 days and are still here. Okay, so our first speaker is Shankar, actually the only speaker in this session, I guess. Is Shankar. He's from NIO, Goa, and he's going to talk on convection and SST gradient in the Bay of Bengal.
Good morning. This is about convection in the bay, but it's linked to the meridional gradient of SST in the same basin. It's based on a paper that was published. It's not on. It's here. Mobile is here. It's not mine. Mine was there. Okay, I'll switch it off anyway. So I'm going to give you a somewhat different perspective of convection. And my interest lies in looking at any possible role for the ocean in what happens in the bay. This is the outline. We'll take a quick look at the Indian summer monsoon. I think you've been told enough about it. And in particular, the migration of the tropical convergence zone. Then we'll look at the SST field in the bay and what controls it. There's a north-south gradient and there's convection. So we'll look at how we have gone about looking at what's been done, and then finally a discussion. Okay, this brief history. The first theories were courtesy Edmund Halley, and he looked at it basically as a giant land sea breeze. A local idea expanded to the large scale, the heating of the land, rising of air, and the cool air from the oceans coming in, and moist air, so convection over the subcontinent. The next picture was from George Hadley almost a century later, and this is actually from a school atlas. So it was about the doldrums and the steady trades and the westerlies, and the one thing that Hadley brought in is the Coriolis acceleration. So this was the first time that the idea of geostrophy came into the picture. But the convergence zone, which Hadley looked at as the doldrums, the low pressure and the warm air over the equator, is not stationary. It follows the seasonal movement of the sun. And there were three chaps, Reel, Ramanathan and Chani. And when it moves over the Indian subcontinent, we say the monsoon has set in. But we now know that it's not just a neat seasonal migration. There are repeated incursions. This is the picture still used by the Indian Met Department. This is the northward migration during onset. So this is on a particular date, canonical dates. The 1st of June, the monsoon would be here. That is where you have active convergence. And what happened? No, but your background is there. That's still there on the website is that of a seasonal transition. And there's something called a retreat, which we know is the convergence zone no longer moving as far north as the sun moves back towards the equator. But what you actually end up seeing is bands that Sulochana talked about. So there are repeated incursions of the tropical convergence zone over the Bay of Bengal. The convection is more in the northern bay. And the question is whether there's any role of the local sea surface temperature in driving the system. The convergence zone forms over mostly the warm tropical oceans, and this is the annual mean picture. You need an SST greater than about 28 degrees Celsius, but if it is above 28, then it doesn't really matter whether it's 29 or 29.5. So 28 is a rough threshold in the Indian Ocean. If it's below 28, you're less likely to have convection. Above 28, well, it convects and it's gone off here, but that's okay. Well above 28, it does not matter, and that's going to be important as we go on. There's also a major asymmetry in this part of the region. This is SST centered on Jan, Feb, and so on for the whole year. You see the warm part. This is a threshold of 27.5, contours only above that, and it follows the sun, but there's an asymmetry, and this is driven by the ocean. You have the upwelling of Somalia, and it cools quite dramatically. So the western part of the Arabian Sea is pretty cold through the core of the monsoon, and you practically have no convection there. The bay, in contrast, stays warm throughout the summer monsoon to support convection. So one question is, why does it do that? Because if you look at the shortwave flux into the Arabian Sea and the bay on an average, and these calculations are for a box north of 6 north and 50 meters in thickness. So it's a control volume for which these calculations have been done. The shortwave flux into the Arabian Sea and even the net flux into the Arabian Sea is higher on average in comparison to the bay. And if you look at the budget, it closes quite well. This was based on a set of data. And the question then is whether the processes intrinsic to the ocean have a role to play here. It turns out that that's true. In the Arabian Sea, you have the strong Findlater jet. It drives strong vertical transport, cooling the western side, and SST on average is lower. So you have weak convective activity. Precipitation is much lower than evaporation over this region. So you have weak near surface stratification. You have practically no stratification in the top part of the Arabian Sea. The stratification is determined by temperature, which decreases rapidly at the base of the mixed layer. And if you have weak near surface stratification, the moment the winds blow, the mixing is efficient. So it is a feedback cycle, positive feedback cycle, with the Findlater jet playing the external role, forcing the Arabian Sea. Over the bay, on average, when you look at monthly means, the winds are weaker. And the vertical transport is weak. On the western side of the bay, that is the east coast of India, you do have upwelling, but it doesn't cut the surface. So it never cools as much. You have warm SSTs and strong convection. So the bay turns out to be a region where precipitation exceeds evaporation by a huge margin, especially north of 15 knot. So you have very strong near surface stratification, and that's one reason the upwelling doesn't penetrate to the surface. So the western side of the bay does not cool, unlike the western side of the Arabian Sea. So yes. Yeah?
Does the freshwater discharge into the bay have anything to do with the stratification?
Yes, it does. But there's that's not completely clear, because on average, yes, the freshwater is important. So if you're looking at these kind of calculations, there's no doubt there. But if you're looking at the discharge in a particular year, so you have put in water after a burst, then its movement determines what happens. And initially it does not move south. It's actually pushed to the east, to the coast of Burma. Unfortunately, we have no data from that side. So the local effect in time is not very clear. It will depend on the details of the circulation. So on average, this is what holds. Yeah.
In the earlier slide, you said 28 degrees C was this magic trigger temperature at the sea surface.
It's a rough threshold.
Why does not the upper temperature matter in terms of setting up the strength of the convection? Is it because it's always constant, or normally it's delta T that determines
Delta T of what?
between
In terms of that Rayleigh convection. Yeah, but you have a case here where you will find regions where temperature is much higher, and you can pull air into those regions. That still does not guarantee that there will be convection. You will have a heat low kind of circulation setting up, we'll come to that, but it does not guarantee you convection. In fact, the problem with Halley's idea of a land sea breeze is that the warmest part of the Indian subcontinent are the deserts of northwestern India and Pakistan. So that's a fundamental problem.
Also, it depends on the amount of moisture that's available.
Right.
After 28, you are in the non-linearity part of the glacier playground. So the amount of moisture available for convection increases. And this is basically moist convection in convection. By having the threshold kind of. It is necessary for organized convection, but doesn't guarantee you organized.
Thank you.
So the stratification implies a weak vertical transport because the upwelling cannot penetrate to the surface. It does not do that anywhere in the bay. And the weak vertical transport allows the SSTs to stay warm. So you have two feedback cycles working in opposite directions. But this is an average picture, averaged north of 6 knots in both basins and over the top 50 meters.
So Bay of Bengal has strong stratification and Arabian Sea has weak stratification.
Right. That's one thing. The second thing is that on average, the winds over the bay drive a more sluggish circulation.
So there's a huge skin effect of heating in the Bay of Bengal, which is absent in the Arabian Sea.
Huge what?
Kind of skin effect.
It's not that thin.
Okay,
This is over 50 meters.
50 meters in the next.
So even over 50 meters, the mixed layer in the bay is much thinner than 50 meters. But even over 50 meters, the bay is warmer than the Arabian Sea.
Thank you.
And if you look at the mixed layer temperature, it never goes below 28 degrees Celsius on average
Wow.
over the entire basin, while the Arabian Sea is not like that. But these are average pictures.
Yeah.
When you break the Arabian Sea into the western and eastern side, you find that there's a difference. The eastern side is something like a cross between the bay and the western Arabian Sea, because you have some salinity effect, but stratification is still weak. On the other hand, you have convection, so locally you have runoff. But this is an average picture, north of 6 north. When you look at the details in the bay, you find that there are differences. There is a north-south difference in SST. These are two boxes. Here averaging is done over 88 to 92 east and 18 to 22 north, while over here it is 4 to 8 north and 80 to 88 east. So there are two boxes. If we look at them, you find that this box tends to be cooler. And that's what we'll start looking at. We're not looking at the bay. If you look at the northern bay and data from buoys, this is what happens through a typical monsoon cycle. This is about 28.5, 29 degrees Celsius, and this is about 28.5. So you have, and this is 30.5, 30.7. So it's a huge swing that takes place with a rough period of something like 15 to 20 days. So it's an oscillation of between 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. Each time there's convection, the northern bay cools, the clouds retreat, the bay warms, and very rapid because you have a very thin mixed layer sitting out there. If you look at the Reynolds SST on the other hand, it really doesn't capture the event as well, these warming and cooling events. TMI on the other hand, and that's this red curve, does a good job in the northern bay. So the microwave sensor has a better chance because it's able to see through clouds with whatever errors are there due to the deep convective clouds sitting in the northern bay. So in the northern bay, SST oscillates through the summer monsoon. So here you have for 1998 from May to October, and you can see that this is the 28 degrees Celsius line, and this is what happens. So there are times when it just drops below 28, but not much. And most of the time it's warm. It goes to 30 and 31 at times.
What happened in September, October, when TMI is so?
Where?
September, October.
Yeah.
Last difference. Yeah.
Which one?
The difference between the TMI
No, no,
and
no.
the SST.
This is only TMI. Just look at the red curve.
Okay, what about
The blue curve I'm coming to. So this is the northern bay, red curve. The blue curve shows you what happens in the southern bay out here. You see a weaker oscillation. If you look at these oscillations, they are much weaker, but at most half a degree Celsius. So each time that convergence band moves over the region, there is an impact, but it's marginal. It's not much. The real signal in the southern part of the bay is the big cooling that takes place, and that's almost a neat linear trend from 31 plus, gradually cooling down to around 28. It hangs around there. It varies from year to year, but it will be just around that threshold, oscillating about it. So it's neither much cooler than that, nor does it ever get much warmer once the monsoon sets in. And this cooling is not driven by the atmosphere. Okay, so we come to the reason for that cooling. The reversing winds force the reversing circulation, and of interest here is just this part, what's shown here in green and what's shown here in blue. These are what are called the monsoon currents. These are trans-basin currents that transport heat and salt between these two highly dissimilar basins. The winter monsoon current flows from the bay to the Arabian Sea, transporting fresh water, and the summer monsoon current carries high salinity water from the Arabian Sea into the bay, but it does one more thing. It carries the cooler waters of southwest India and this part between India and Sri Lanka into the Bay of Bengal. So this is the cooling that's driven by the ocean. So this is what you see in the circulation. This is winter, February. You have the winter monsoon current. These are trans-basin currents. They go all the way across the basin, but only in their mature phase. There is a transition as we shall see in the summer. This is in July, all the way from the Somali region out into the bay and right to the other end. So these are trans-basin currents, but it's only in Jan, Feb, and again in July, August that you see them cutting right across the basin. If you look at the seasonal cycle, what you find is that the monsoon current in summer takes the cool waters of southwest India and south of India and Sri Lanka into the Bay of Bengal. So this is what happens in May. You have this Rossby wave out here coming back from the east in the equator, and the summer monsoon current starts off in the Bay of Bengal as the northern flank of the Rossby wave. But the Rossby wave propagates slowly across the basin at 10 north, which is about here. Its speed is already around 10 centimeters per second. So over the season, you're going to see a gradual conditioning of the background state. So this is what you see in May. The monsoon current goes right across the southern part of the bay. In June, you can see the connection in the Arabian Sea has formed, and this part has strengthened. In July, it's the classical current all the way across the basin, connecting the Somali current all the way to the eastern part of the bay. But as that Rossby wave moves incessantly across the basin, that flank tilts. So what you find is that the monsoon current, instead of taking the cold and saline waters right across the southern bay, is now going to move it more towards the northeast. And that's what's happening here. In September, this is where it lies. So this is the background conditioning that is changing gradually over the season. And that is what drives that cooling that we saw in the southern part. So in the northern part, you have fresh water coming from rivers and from local rainfall, resulting in a very thin mixed layer. It's almost like a thin plate. You heat it, it responds, then clouds form, it cools, just keeps oscillating. It can hit 30 degrees Celsius, drop to 28, but it can recover within a fortnight. Now, air sea coupling with some intervention of land over the North Indian Ocean introduces a local modification in this huge convergence zone, which basically cuts across the entire Indo-Pacific region. It's a global scale feature of the tropical atmosphere. Now, SST, according to the meteorologists, is the coupler, the main modulator of the atmosphere. The question is, can you then use it as a predictor? One aspect of that SST field is reasonably deterministic, and that is the cooling driven by the ocean in the southern part. It's such a gradual cooling, and the Rossby wave that reflects back from the eastern part of the equatorial Indian Ocean is one of the few things that we can predict with reasonable certainty. You know where it lies, altimeter data show you, you can, if you want to assimilate it, and the models will get that right. Almost any reasonable model gets even the interseasonal variability in the equatorial region right. It's a much different game when you come to the coastal region of India. The models just break down. The scales are so small that they're just not able to reproduce any of the currents. In the seasonal cycles, at times are a disaster. But the question is, can you use this? There are two players here. One is in the southern bay, the ocean setting up conditioning, just holding it there with mild oscillations around that 28 degrees Celsius threshold. And in the north, you have a wild fluctuation driven by the convective systems. So SST has been used as a predictor. IMD still uses SST as a parameter in its seasonal forecast model, but results are not satisfactory. In statistical sense, there's a very unreliable correlation between SST and Indian summer monsoon rainfall. Monthly mean data and seasonal forecasts still in a tent. Yeah?
The SST used by the IMD.
It's not this one.
Are they the right SST? That's what I got.
No, it's not this one.
This one.
They are forced to rely on the buoys. And where you put a buoy, you pick that, you see if there is it's a viable parameter and you use it.
And satellites are not good enough.
I think Bhatt would be better placed to answer that question. He has questions on TMI, which is the only one that's reliable during the monsoon, the microwave sensor.
When I start using SST, these were not there. Drifting buoys were there. That question report.
Drifting buoys are a problem. They keep drifting.
Right. Question report. So at those days there were no buoys when they started using their parameters.
But they have been using the DS1 in the Arabian Sea,
Doing SST also, it would be different. Not the real time.
not real time. Okay. So satellite sensors, particularly microwave, provide better and global data. So you have a way to track even interseasonal variations. It's not bad today. The data show a break in the monsoon follows cooling in the northern bay, the 10-day lag, that's Vicky and Harrison. And the question is this meridional gradient important? Meridional in the sense that you have two boxes that are not along a meridian, but you can still look at it as a north-south gradient in temperature. So can these data help predict onset of convection? Is there some lag that you can use as a predictor? If you have a meridional gradient here, warm water here, cooler water here, you will set up a pressure gradient and that would drive a geostrophic flow, the Findata jet right across the basin. So that's the idea. So you have here the summer monsoon current and it's cooling, and over here in the north, that's where the depressions form and move over India, bringing rain to the subcontinent. The data we use are from TMI and rainfall is from GPCP. Okay, so this is the kind of picture we're going to be looking at. We have SST here. This is the red curve is for the northern bay, oscillating, and this is the southern bay, the box there, the average. And what you have here is just the delta T, the difference in temperature between the two boxes, with two lines. The first one here is at 1 degree Celsius, and the one below that is at 0.75. So wherever it's colored red, the delta T goes over 0.75 degrees Celsius, which is beyond the threshold of TMI errors. So it's a number you can rely on. And what you have over here are rainfall events. These are bursts in rainfall in this box. Box out here, 14 to 18 north, 88 to 92 east. Central Bay, just south of that box in the north where we look at the system. So the question is there any link between these rainfall events and these SST events? Because the SST gradient oscillates thanks to the large changes that are there in the northern bay SST. And there's a gradual change in this temperature in the south, which acts as a conditioning. So the northern bay has to heat up much more to drive this difference above 0.75 degrees Celsius as the season progresses. This is the rainfall, and you can see the repeated northward propagations. And this is the cooling in the southern bay once the monsoon current sets in, and you have cooling and warming in the northern bay. This is with latitude and time. Okay, SST in the northern bay oscillates. There is a weaker oscillation in the southern bay superimposed on a cooling trend from May to mid-July, and this difference basically determines the gradient over the basin. Rainfall is noisy. more than one burst characterizes a rain event. And that is the whole game we played. The question is, how do you define an SST event and how do you define a rain event? So that's what we'll look at. So this is SST difference curve. And the question is, what is an event now? An event in the sense that there will be breaks in it. You may have a local cloud that decreases temperature and then it disappears. The next day the warming is back.
So don't you get organized mesoscale convective systems?
Pardon?
Don't you get convective organizations?
They are organized.
Yes.
But you're looking at a box.
Sometimes, do the organized systems go northward or southward?
Northward.
Northward always?
Always northward.
Always.
Always northward.
The mesoscale systems I'm talking about, not the synoptic scale systems.
No, it's the convergence zone that moves northward. Embedded within that will be vortices.
That's what I mean. The synoptic westward and mesoscale systems could go southward.
I'm not sure they go southward. They do?
They go southward. Mesoscale convective systems go southward. So my question then, they should go southward.
It's embedded within the larger scale.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm asking this question is it's a chicken-egg question because those things are affecting your SST
Right.
very much.
So that's
They're a coherent, organized way to change SST dramatically.
right. So we'll come to that. That
We'll come
question,
to that.
yeah.
Okay.
Because that question decides whether the whole thing holds or not. Is SST the cause and rainfall the effect, or is rainfall the cause and SST the effect? That question has to be looked at. We'll come to that at the end.
Or cold air outbreaks cold air downdrafts, cold pools from mesoscale convective systems.
Not SST. They won't affect
They
SST.
affect SST, sure.
Here?
Sure. You get cold pools from mesoscale convective systems that locally affect SST. Mixing of the layers, you entrain the lower level water from mesoscale convective systems.
Yeah, but that would show up here.
Well-known tropical mesoscale convective effect.
Now that's fine, but that would show up in the SST.
Yes.
There is only one point.
But
You may not have a sufficient density of SST that you mentioned, way on the scale on which the mesoscale is.
So this is quarter degree pixel for TMI. And you're averaging here on a 4 degree by 4 degree box, so it's pretty reasonable.
4 degree by 4 degree box may be too large for this.
I'm not interested in that mesoscale. See, even that 4 degree box is a part of the whole synoptic system. So the question is, what is happening across the bay?
After that question is, Dewey data does show that whenever there is event passing over short burst of rainfall, slight decrease in SST, but it recovers in no time. Within few hours, it is back to the old state. The skim pool stability.
So cold pool initiation somehow is not important here.
No, not important. On a time.
Although it's important everywhere else in the tropics.
No,
So that's
yeah.
strange.
The effect lasts for about few hours. After that, SST is back to normal in about.
So somehow its recovery time scale is very rapid.
Yeah, it's very
here.
rapid.
Very rapid. here.
Very rapid.
Thank you.
Small
Thank you.
Okay, so within that day you see fluctuations driven by these things. Okay.
It's interesting.
It's over.
This is going on.
See, TNI won't even look at that because it's ostensibly a daily product. But you have 3-day data that are somehow smoothed out to give you.
Northward circulation.
Pardon?
Northward circulation.
In what? In the.
ocean, northward circulation.
It's not northward. There is
In the
a
current contact.
boundary current that is shallow on the western boundary. It's a very shallow current.
I thought you showed a picture where there's this nice.
Yeah, but that is from the south, eastward, and then into the bay.
Yeah, northward, east, northward, like this.
Yes,
So that would bring warm water from the equator.
it's not warm water. It's actually bringing cold water. Because the part of the Arabian Sea that it's coming from is one of the coolest parts outside of the Somali region.
But it goes through the equatorial region.
No, it does not. There's a difference between the equatorial waveguide and this part because the southern tip of Sri Lanka is at 6 north. So if you look at the e-folding length scales, they decouple.
I'm puzzled by why you don't mix some of this cold water from mesoscale convective systems.
I think that's
So empirically, you say the time scale of adjustment is short, but you would think cold pools would be very efficient at capping some of the. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
okay. This was news. I didn't know about this stuff. Fine, but we still have this problem of defining what would constitute an event, because we are trying to link SST differences to rainfall. Rainfall is noisy. We still have to define a rainfall event. But before that, we still have the problem of defining what's an SST event. It's defined with respect to this threshold, and empirically we concluded 0.75 is a better bet than 1 degree Celsius. The question is, how long do you expect it to last? So we said at least 5 days. But then in between, if you have a mild clouding, that can drop, because it kind of hovers around that 0.75 degrees Celsius threshold. So if it drops and then recovers within a day, do you call it a break? I mean, is your event gone? The answer is no. A break of no more than 1 day is permitted in delta T. And the SST event ends with the first break exceeding 1 day. By break, we mean not the monsoon breaks in the classical sense, but a break in this time series of delta T with respect to 0.75 degrees Celsius. So this was empirical from the data. No break was permitted within the first 3 days. This is just to ensure that you have a robust signal. And so delta T greater than 0.75 degrees Celsius necessary condition for the first 3 days. The trouble is that this clouding, there is an intermittency to it. So you are looking at neither the synoptic scale here nor the very local scale. There are clouds on a local scale that can cut the radiation and lower SST, and then the threshold is gone again. So we had to factor that in. So you can have multiple breaks in this time series, but provided no break exceeds a day. This is just to ensure that you're not looking at some feature that is larger than something that's extremely local. So this is how we define that SST event. So where you have these red parts, you can see that in between you will see some black dots, but this still remains a single event. Likewise here you have even 2 extending across. Rainfall was a more difficult one because it's extremely noisy. SST at least has some regularity to it. The other question with rainfall is what is a reasonable threshold? From TMI we finally settled on 5 millimeters per day for at least 3 days. But then you are also looking at an integral of the rainfall. There can be a huge burst that deposits 20 centimeters in 1 day and then you have nothing after that. Now how does that compare with 5 centimeters per day over 3 days? If 5 centimeters per day over 3 days is a rain event, why not 20 centimeters in 1 day? How do you factor in these 2 distinct scenarios? And it's very noisy. You have these drops, it just goes down to 0, just picks up. The question is what constitutes a rain event in a quasi-synoptic sense? Because if you look at those cloud bands, you will see that they are sitting there. The large scale system is sitting there. In between there are pockets where you have clouding and no clouding, clouding and no clouding, rainfall and no rainfall, oscillating through it. So what we are trying to do is define an event that picks that synoptic signal in some sense.
All rainfall in the northern bay is possible.
Only there. Central Bay, 14 to 18 north.
Okay, but so in between the two is
In between the two. Because according to Joseph, that's the more reasonable box. If you pick the northern box, it doesn't differ much. It's just that rainfall tends to hang on much longer there because you're close to land and this land hydrology feedbacks are more serious as you go towards the northern part of the bay. Right. So if you're talking in terms of propagation, this is better. It's neither in the south nor at the fag end where it can hang on for a month or 2. So a break of up to 3 days was permitted, unlike in SST where we permitted only 1 day break. After the first 3 days, the event ends with the first break exceeding 3 days. No break is permitted within the first 3 days, that is R has to be greater than 5 millimeter per day for the first 3 days. But if the rainfall exceeds 20 millimeter per day on the first or second day, we say okay, you can have a break on the third day. I mean the water has just been dumped, then the convection collapses in that box, but then it may recover the next day. So this is something that had to be factored in defining the rainfall event. So the there's a formal definition. And then the question is, once you have come up with these definitions, the two things: one, how sensitive is whatever you find to these definitions, and second, what happens as a consequence. Now do you have a relation between SST and rainfall? As far as sensitivity is concerned, what we found is that this definition, giving you a choice of parameters, turns out to be optimum to link SST gradient to rainfall. There is not enough events over an 8-year period. You'll have something like 25 to 30 to carry out a statistical test. And each year is pathological. So there are large-scale conditionings that are different from year to year. 99, for example, was a classic case. 2002 was that remarkable drought. So each is distinct. Yet, is there something that holds on this neither very large scale nor the very local scale? Something in between the two. Okay, so this is what you have, and this is just the same thing again. Okay, now this is a histogram of the number of days an event lasts, and this is the number of events. So this is the lag histogram. This is the lag. This is the lag histogram for the core monsoon period, that is mid-May to end of September. The statistics change if you go from the beginning of May to the end of October, because there is a part that is really warm. You haven't had the cooling in the south, and it's still not classical monsoon dynamics having set in. October is another tricky part because it's the transition between the summer to the winter, and the statistics still hold, but they're much weaker. So this is a lag histogram where you see delta T of 0.75 leading the rainfall event. The question is, how many events do you get? The lag in days is on the abscissa. So the SST event starts, and after how many days do you get the rainfall event starting? So that's this lag. So you get some starting at the same time, that's 2 events and so on, but the peak occurs around 7 days. So you have the start of an SST event, that is a delta T of 0.75 between the north and the south. 7 days later, convection sets in over the central Bay of Bengal.
So that is still rain over the bay.
Yeah, it will rain over the central bay. This is a sensitivity study. We changed it to half degree Celsius. This one is with just the northern bay SST. You forget about the southern bay altogether. I mean, question is, does it matter at all? Because the oscillation is so large in the northern bay, do you really need to worry about that cooling that's taking place in the south? It turns out that it gives you a better picture than if you use the northern bay alone as a predictor. The other question is what you were asking. Jay Srinivasan asked this question when this talk was given at the center here. Which is the cause and which is the effect? Is there any way to tell one from the other? If you look at the two histograms, delta T leading and R leading, they are quite similar. Because you have a 15-day cycle, roughly, and your lag peaks at 7 days. The histogram peaks at a 7-day lag. Okay. So during May to October, over 8 years, this idea holds for about 71% of the cases. The hypothesis is that the delta T will lead to a rainfall event. So there are occasions when there is a rainfall event without a leading SST event, but if you look at May to October, most of them turn out to be in either the first half of May or in October. So that's why we looked again at what we call the core monsoon period. There are some cases where you have very long lags, but these are typically during the pre-onset, early May, and retreat phases of the monsoon. So if you look at the core monsoon period, the hypothesis holds in 84% of the cases. So over 8 years, there were 32 occasions, and on 27 of them, an SST event was accompanied by a rainfall event with the histogram peaking at a 7-day lag. On 5 occasions, there was a rainfall event without a leading SST event. It might just be starting the day before, we don't know. There was no SST event that was not followed by rainfall, and this is important. The other thing is that the lag histogram, of course, peaked at 1 week. So if there is an SST event, that is, if the delta T exceeds 0.75 degrees Celsius, and all those conditions that were defined for the SST event hold, you are guaranteed rainfall, typically within 7 days in the central bay. The rainfall can persist even after the SST gradient weakens. So it can kick in the rainfall, but after that it does not matter. There's a lot of other things that happen, including land hydrology feedbacks, to keep that system persisting. Now this is the point that we use to say that SST is the cause and rainfall the effect. Rain events that were not associated with SST events tended to be very short, typically less than 6 days, while rain events that lacked an SST event tended to be long. Those are the cases where the band moves across the bay and then hangs on in the northern bay. So in a synoptic sense, you have a system that persists. If you did not have the SST event, the systems tended to be short-lived. You probably have the burst across and it dies. It does not survive.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Except they tend to go southward, I think.
Well, that's what I say.
I don't know what the bands.
Show, the synoptic scale.
Yes. I don't know. I think the better people to answer that are here.
The system moving. With
I'm
a
almost
smaller
through.
scale, southward propagating streaks in it. The big thing is moving upwards, but it contains things which are moving southwards. It happens in the day. It happens in the day. That's a satellite. No, but it is generally observed. I don't think there is controversy.
Even in observation, when you look at Kimberley, on a Dyson scale, smaller than embedded in the
Embedded, yes. Smaller scale than the.
Okay, so they do exist. Okay, can you replace the delta T with just the northern bay temperature? It turns out that if you do that, the temperature that you need to use is 29 degrees Celsius. It has nothing to do with the convection threshold of 28. And events tend to decrease, the number of events, the lags increase, and the histogram is more scattered or gappy. It turns out that delta T is a better criterion than this northern bay temperature alone. And it's quite likely that you need to hit 29 degrees Celsius in the northern bay in order to trigger convection, because that is what sets up that 0.75 degrees Celsius across the Bay of Bengal. That allows the jet to build up, and then the ocean is warm enough in the north to support convection out there. So this is the summary. 84% of the cases, 27 out of 32. I'd like to see what happened beyond 2005. I haven't done that. Okay, this excess in the northern bay temperature, not 28 but 29 degrees Celsius, is what is needed to raise delta T above the threshold of 0.75 degrees, the delta T. So the SST north criterion is actually a proxy for the delta T. That's the claim we make. So in the absence of an SST event of this kind, rainfall events tend to be short-lived. Long rainfall events, and they can last up to a month at times, are always associated with SST events. Now this is the only point in favor of SST being the cause and rainfall the effect. Because if you look at the histograms, they are almost mirror images, they're symmetric. Okay, likely scenario, the SST gradient and the associated sea level pressure gradient triggers a geostrophic zonal flow into the bay, the Finlater jet. The zonal flow is associated with cyclonic vorticity to its north, and the cyclonic vorticity induces deep atmospheric convection gradually, in steps. Initially you have the heat low, and then you are mastering the atmosphere and you kick in convection. The convection strengthens the low-level jet stream through peninsular India, because once you have mid-tropospheric heating, the suction is better across the peninsula. And this positive feedback allows rainfall to persist even when the SST gradient weakens, because now you have a gradient driven not just by the surface temperature but by the mid-tropospheric temperature gradient. So you don't need the SST gradient anymore. You have a vacuum pump that you have shifted up in the atmosphere. So a rainfall event over the central bay can be expected to occur soon after the northern bay SST exceeds 29 degrees Celsius. The rainfall event is extremely likely to occur within a week of the SST difference between the northern and southern bay exceeding 0.75. There is a 78% chance of this happening during May to September. The convection over the bay is a precursor to convection over India, because that's how those depressions move across from the northern bay. So delta T therefore has the potential to evolve into a tool for prediction of behavior of the monsoon a week in advance. The question is, why does this hold only about 80% of the time? And it's a global scale phenomenon. That's what the convergence zone is. And we are looking at a local modification due to special conditions that exist over the bay. The question was, does the bay matter at all? I mean, or is it just something driven by typhoons in the Pacific or some very large scale gradients? That was the question. But here you have a conditioning set up by the cooling in the south, and there's gradual modification as the Ross Bay wave moves across the southern bay. So we cannot ignore what happens elsewhere. Maybe accurate prediction will require consideration of both the local picture, as Hadley emphasized, that's the classical sea breeze idea, and the global picture that Hadley pointed out. Thanks.
We are
2000?
waiting for the northward.
I have no idea. 2012 was a tough time. We were sitting in the southern part of the bay. He was in the north.
I was in the north in one ship, he was in the south in the other ship. We are waiting for the north.
There was none. But there were two propagations. One just before the cruise and one just after the cruise. Just after. The question was, how long do we just wait? In fact, I had a tough question to answer people on the ship. Why are we staying here where nothing is happening?
I have just two very simple questions. So the first one is, so the convection starts over the Bay of Bengal, you said. So can you say exactly where it starts? Does it start like on the east or southward, or the south-north part, the northwest part, or in the center or somewhere? Is it located where the peak of SST is located or not?
Okay, the convergence band and the clouding and the rainfall, they move from south to north across the Bay of Bengal. Now, there are differences even within the bay. There is an east-west difference and there's a north-south difference. What happens is once the band reaches the north, it hangs on. It persists. The maximum rainfall is on the slopes of the mountain chains of Burma. And that's where you have the very narrow but very strong convection band driven by orographic rainfall. But that orographic lifting is possible because you have this band moving northward, and that has nothing to do with orography. That thin band of rainfall that occurs in the northeastern bay is due to orography. But you have a large-scale system which is being driven by something else. And it persists. It can persist for up to a month at times. And that's what happened. He had no end of rain, actually, in the north. He was sitting at 19 north. It was pouring all through, strong winds. We were at 85 east, 8 north. No rainfall. There was a chap who had come to measure rainfall with a disdrometer. He got more stuff from the sea spray than he got from the rain. It was that bad. Nothing happened. And
So-
we just came back and blew up.
So the second question is related to one of the ballots you have in one of your last slide or so, where you said like convection over India is associated to convection in the Bay of Bengal. Is that always the case, or is it only for this large persisting events?
I
Or
think I did.
So,
Yeah, these are the systems. The convective systems, the depressions form here and they just move across.
So there's a distinct difference. We think most of your convective initiation in Bay of Bengal is mesoscale convective systems, which help precondition for the synoptic scale systems in the correct shear environment. And so over the continent, all your rain is coming from more or less very powerful mid-latitude synoptic scale systems. Is that right? No.
These are lows and depressions.
Even over India, the continent also.
Yes.
Continent has many embedded mesoscale convective systems. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Okay, just you. So you have these so many events, no? Like now, this precipitation over this central bay where we have saying. So, do you have any rough idea where from those precipitation systems come? Because we have westward propagating systems, we have northward propagating systems, and we have genesis over Bay of Bengal.
Okay. We didn't look at it.
Okay.
What we have here is a picture that shows you time and latitude.
Okay.
Okay? And you can make out. But
Okay.
what you don't have here is the east-west part.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
But you see enough of these northward propagations. And it varies from year to year.
Okay. That is one. So I have another small question. Say, when you have some definition of the events, isn't it?
Yes.
Precipitation I'm talking about. Right? Yeah. So it excludes some of the events. It excludes some of the rainfall events. For example, some rainy days it will exclude because of the criteria.
Yeah.
So do you have a rough estimate of what is the ratio of that, like how much you are excluding from the precipitation, total precipitation over that region?
I think for that I'll have to look at the...
Okay.
I've forgotten that. But the sensitivity analysis that was done by changing a variety of parameters showed that the definition that was picked was basically the optimum set of parameters to bring home the relationship. In fact, you change the averaging longitudes in the southern bay, it changes because there's a difference between the eastern and western bay.
I have just a short question about flow. Excuse me. So you assume that the SST gradient is triggering geostrophic circulation, and so
Yes.
you compute surface currents from SST gradient. So I just wonder.
Surface currents I'm not computing.
Okay, so where is the role of atmospheric winds? I just
The winds are there. I mean, the moment you have convection, if say for example you have convection over the equator,
okay,
the convergence is towards that band of clouds. It shifts north. Now the convergence is towards that, and there is a cross-equatorial flow that has to take the air right into that band.
Can one quantify or compute to what extent are surface currents due to surface winds forcing?
No. This was just looking at the difference in temperature that is set up and what happens as a consequence of that. We expect that if you have a difference in temperature, you will have a difference in pressure. We have low pressure in the north, high pressure in the south, and that has to drive a geostrophic flow across.
Okay,
It will be a shallow flow. But then once you have that shallow flow into a region that has the potential for rainfall, convection and rainfall, you will moisten the atmosphere, condition it, and gradually kick in the rainfall. So that's probably the reason it is not always a zero lag. It's not that you have the delta T and you have rainfall. There's definite lag, and it peaks at about 7 days. That might be the conditioning time.
Okay, so shall we continue the discussions over tea? Yeah. So let's thank Shankar again and
Thanks to Ravi for making it possible. It was not working.